In the vast reaches of the galaxy, where the stars burn cold and civilizations rise and fall, one name sends shockwaves through every system. A criminal mastermind, a fugitive with a bounty larger than any ever seen before, yet she seeks one thing above all: protection. But not just from anyone, from a human male. Stay tuned as we unravel the story of a galactic renegade, the most wanted female in the universe, and the extraordinary request that will change the fate of an entire galaxy. In the sprawling expanse of the galaxy, there existed a name that struck fear into the hearts of both lawmen and criminals alike: Zara Vantor. Known throughout the universe as a brilliant tactician and a merciless criminal mastermind, she was one of the most infamous figures to ever walk the stars. Zara's reputation wasn't just built on the crimes she committed. It was her uncanny ability to slip through the grasp of anyone who tried to catch her. Bounty hunters had tried. Galactic law enforcement had tried. Even the most advanced tracking systems had failed. Zara was elusive, untouchable, and she reveled in it. Her rise to power had been swift. From humble beginnings on a backwater planet, Zara quickly discovered a knack for strategy and manipulation. She could read people like an open book and knew just how to exploit their weaknesses. It wasn't long before she was running intricate heists, stealing from the wealthiest factions in the galaxy, and turning the tables on the most powerful organizations. With every success, her influence grew, and her name became a whisper of terror. What made Zara particularly dangerous wasn't just her mind, it was her ruthlessness. She had no allies, only pawns, and she never hesitated to sacrifice anyone, including those who once considered her a friend. Her rise to the top of the criminal underworld was marked by betrayal, cunning, and precision. For those who crossed her, death was often swift, but not always painless. Zara's recent scene, however, had been her undoing. She had taken on a high-risk mission involving the Sashkaar, an ancient and powerful alien race that controlled vast parts of the galaxy. It had been a perfect job until she crossed them. The Sashkaar, known for their unyielding loyalty to their own kind and their brutal tactics, were not an enemy to be trifled with. What seemed like a minor betrayal in Zara's eyes had become a declaration of war in theirs. Now, Zara found herself the target of the Sashkar's wrath. Unlike the fleeting bounty she had once evaded, this time, her enemies were no longer willing to play by the rules. The Sashkaar didn't just want her dead, they wanted to make her suffer before the end. Her options were dwindling, and the galaxy's most wanted criminal was on the run. Again. The bounty on her head was astronomical, more credits than anyone could spend in a lifetime, and the most lethal bounty hunters were lining up for a chance at her. But even with the entire galaxy hunting her, Zara was not someone to panic. She had a plan. She always had a plan. It was a plan born out of desperation, but it was a plan nonetheless. Zara had never trusted anyone in her life. She had learned long ago that trusting others was a dangerous game. But now, cornered and out of options, she was willing to place her faith in one unlikely place: humanity. The humans were young, reckless, and their presence in the galaxy was still small compared to older races. But they had something the other species lacked: unpredictability. Zara sent out a distress signal, a cry for help, but it wasn't just any plea for aid. She didn't call for help from the galaxy's elite. She didn't call for mercenaries or bounty hunters. She called for one thing: protection, and she wanted it from a human male. Why a human male? Zara herself couldn't fully explain it, but she had come to believe that if anyone could match the ruthlessness of the Sashkaar, it would be a human. Her gamble was simple. If she could convince one human to protect her, maybe she could finally turn the tide. But there was no way to predict what would come next. She was either going to die or find a partner she could trust. In either case, she was playing a game of survival, and the stakes had never been higher. Zara Vantor had never been one to ask for help. In her years of leading heists, manipulating the powerful, and escaping the clutches of every bounty hunter the galaxy had thrown at her, she had learned that reliance on others was a weakness. She trusted no one. People were tools, expendable, and loyalty was always fleeting. But as the Sashkaar closed in, and the last few safe havens crumbled beneath her, desperation finally took root. In the back of her mind, Zara had always known that this day might come when her schemes would spiral out of control, and she would be forced to flee, with nowhere left to run. What had once been her greatest asset, her ability to slip away unnoticed, was now a curse. She had been running for weeks, hopping from system to system, always one step ahead, but never safe. The Sashkaar were relentless, their technology beyond anything she had ever encountered. They didn't care for credits or power. Their only objective was her annihilation, and they were prepared to destroy entire planets to get to her. Her situation was dire. She knew that even her most trusted contacts were too terrified of the Sashkaar to help. The criminal factions she had worked with in the past had abandoned her, either too frightened of the alien race or eager to claim the bounty on her head. As the walls closed in, Zara found herself contemplating an option. She had long dismissed the one thing that had always seemed absurd to her: humans. The human race, though young by galactic standards, had been making waves. Known for their adaptability, their uncanny knack for survival, and their ability to think outside the box, humans had earned a reputation for being unpredictable. In a universe governed by ancient rules and powerful races, humanity stood apart, unconstrained by tradition or fear of the unknown. Zara had seen the humans rise from the ashes of their own battles to become something far more formidable than anyone could have expected. Her decision wasn't made lightly. She had spent hours debating whether or not to take the risk. But in the end, Zara was a survivor. And when survival depended on the most unlikely of choices, she was willing to gamble. So in the dead of night, as her ship hurtled through the stars, she sent a message, an encrypted distress signal out into the vastness of the galaxy. It was a plea for protection, but with a very specific demand. She wanted a human male. Why a human male? The question lingered in Zara's mind as she punched in the coordinates to send the message. She knew she couldn't rely on just any human. She needed someone with a certain set of skills, someone who had seen battle and understood how to think under pressure. A soldier, perhaps, or a mercenary with a track record of taking on the impossible. Zara wasn't entirely sure why it had to be a male, but in her experience, men often had an easier time following orders, especially when those orders came from someone with as much power and influence as she had once wielded. The truth was, Zara needed someone who could withstand the immense pressure that would come with protecting her. She needed someone capable of seeing beyond the bounty on her head and focusing on the greater stakes. Her survival meant the survival of something much bigger than either of them. The message was simple, direct, and stark: protect me. The Sashkaar are coming. I offer you protection in return. Your life is at risk, but your reward will be immense. Find me. I am a woman of my word. There was no explanation, no story. Zara knew that if the right person received the signal, they would understand without needing further details. The risk was enormous. If anyone else intercepted the message, it would be a death sentence. But Zara had no choice. As the message sent and her ship jumped into hyperspace, she realized the truth: she had just thrown herself into the hands of fate. But the one thing Zara Vantor never did was give up. If she was going to die, it would be on her own terms. And if she was going to survive, it would be by her own hand, with the help of a human she hoped would rise to the occasion. Marcus Hawk had seen his share of danger in his lifetime. A former soldier who had fought on multiple fronts during the Galactic Wars, he had grown accustomed to the harsh realities of life in a universe where survival was the only currency. After leaving the military, he became a freelance protector, someone who offered his services to the highest bidder. He was good at what he did, defending the defenseless, escorting valuable individuals, and often finding himself in situations where few others dared to tread. But despite all his experience, nothing could have prepared him for the message he was about to receive. He had just completed a routine job on the edge of known space when his communication system beeped with a single, encrypted transmission. It wasn't unusual. He often got job offers through unofficial channels. But this one was different. The message wasn't just a job request. It was a call to action, one that seemed to come from someone who knew far more than they were willing to say. The signal, though encrypted and hidden behind layers of security, had one message that immediately caught Marcus's attention: protection. Marcus had read the message through twice before he realized who it was from Zara Vantor. Her name sent a chill down his spine. In the vast reaches of the galaxy, there were few names more feared or more legendary. Zara Vantor was a criminal mastermind, the most wanted woman in the galaxy. For years, the galaxy's authorities had failed to capture her, and bounty hunters had tried and failed in pursuit of her. She had made a name for herself by outsmarting everyone and surviving against impossible odds. That was the allure of her name. She was untouchable. And now, somehow, she was asking for help. Why would someone like Zara Vantor, a woman who had always operated alone, suddenly turn to a human like Marcus? The answer wasn't clear, but the gravity of the situation was undeniable. The message spoke of a powerful enemy, the Sashkaar, an ancient Ulian race known for their deadly precision and ruthless tactics. They were a race few could match, and they had zero tolerance for betrayal. As Marcus read the rest of the message, he saw something else that caught his eye: Zara's offer. She didn't just want protection, she offered him something in return, something beyond credits or material wealth. Your reward will be immense, the message promised. It was an odd phrase, and for a moment, Marcus considered walking away from the whole thing. But then, a single thought stopped him cold. If Zara Vantor had gotten herself into a situation where she was asking for help, the stakes were higher than anything he had encountered before. The Sashkaar were closing in on her, and the possibility of being the one to capture or kill Zara was a prize few could resist. But Marcus was different. He wasn't interested in bounties, he was interested in survival, and that was exactly what Zara needed. After a moment of consideration, he made his decision. Marcus Hawk was no stranger to danger, but this was something entirely different. He'd seen plenty of criminals, corrupt officials, and powerful figures in his time, but the thought of protecting one of the galaxy's most wanted criminals, and from an enemy as deadly as the Sashkaar, intrigued him in ways he couldn't explain. His ship, a battered but reliable vessel, powered up for the jump to the coordinates provided in the message. As the familiar hum of the hyperdrive filled the cabin, Marcus allowed himself one final thought. Zara Vantor was a brilliant strategist, a master manipulator, but in that moment, he had to wonder if even she understood what she was asking for. If Marcus was going to accept this job, it would be because he could see something that Zara could not: a galaxy where the unexpected could become the most powerful weapon of all. The destination was a place far from the watchful eyes of galactic authorities, a neutral space where the Sashkaar might not yet have a presence. The stakes were clear. It wasn't just about protecting Zara. It was about surviving long enough to uncover the truth of what she was really running from. As the stars streaked by, Marcus felt the weight of the decision he had just made. The universe was a dangerous place, but sometimes survival came down to a simple truth: trust no one except yourself. And right now, the only one he trusted was himself. When Marcus Hawk finally arrived at the coordinates Zara had provided, he was met with an unexpected sight: a small, unmarked station floating on the edge of a nebula, far from any well-traveled trade routes. It was a place that spoke of isolation, a place where even the most desperate would hesitate to venture. As his ship docked, the doors opened with a faint hiss, and he stepped into the station, immediately feeling the weight of something strange in the air. Zara was waiting for him. She stood alone, her figure silhouetted against the dim lights of the station's central chamber. She was even more striking in person: tall, with sharp features and an air of undeniable confidence. Yet beneath that cold exterior, Marcus could see the subtle signs of exhaustion in her posture. Zara Vantor, the notorious criminal mastermind, wasn't as invincible as her reputation suggested. Without a word, Zara gestured for Marcus to follow her. The station was eerily quiet, its low hum a constant reminder of how far from civilization they were. As they walked through the narrow hallways, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Zara was always one step ahead, and yet she had reached out to him, a mere human, to protect her from an enemy far beyond her capability to escape. He had to know why. Once they were in a small, secure room, Zara finally spoke. "Do you know who the Sashkaar are?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with something Marcus couldn't quite place: fear, perhaps, or maybe something worse: regret. Marcus nodded. He had heard stories about the Sashkaar, an ancient and reclusive race with technology that outstripped anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were rumored to have been around for millennia, and their reputation was one of fear and destruction. They weren't just another threat. They were the kind of enemy that could wipe entire civilizations from existence if they chose to. "They're not just after me," Zara continued, her gaze focused on the floor as if the weight of the words burdened her more than the Sashkaar ever could. They're after something much bigger. Something that has the power to change the course of history. Marcus studied her, trying to make sense of her cryptic statement. She wasn't just a criminal on the run. There was more to this story. Something deeper than any bounty or heist. Zara Vantor, as dangerous and manipulative as she was, seemed almost vulnerable in that moment. What did they want? Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the storm of questions brewing inside him. Zara took a deep breath before meeting his gaze. It's an artifact. An ancient one, hidden in plain sight, buried deep within my mind. And the Sashkaar are determined to extract it. They believe it holds the key to a power that could reshape the galaxy. Marcus felt a chill run through him. An artifact? Hidden in her mind? The implications were staggering. If the Sashkaar were after something that powerful, the stakes were far higher than he had realized. The universe's balance could be at risk. But how could Zara, a criminal who had lived a life of deception and manipulation, have come into possession of something so significant? Zara's expression softened, and for the first time since he'd met her, Marcus saw a flicker of something genuine, something beyond the cold, calculating mind he had expected. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. I was chosen, or maybe cursed with it. I don't even remember how it happened. But now they'll stop at nothing to get it. Marcus took a moment to process the revelation. Zara had always been a mystery to him, a figure in the shadows of the galaxy's criminal world. But now she was more than just a fugitive with a bounty on her head. She was a woman burdened with an unimaginable secret, one that even she didn't fully understand. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the more Marcus learned, the more questions emerged. Why had the Sashkaar chosen Zara as the keeper of such a powerful artifact? What had it meant for her to have it in the first place? And why couldn't she remember its origins? The danger was greater than he had ever imagined, and the fragile alliance between him and Zara felt even more uncertain. But one thing was clear: Marcus had no choice but to protect her. She might be a criminal, but she was also a key to something that could change the fate of the galaxy. And in that moment, Marcus knew that this mission wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. The weight of the revelation hung heavily in the air. Marcus Hawk stood in the small, dimly lit room on the remote station, grappling with the implications of what Zara had just told him. The Sashkaar, an ancient and seemingly invincible race, weren't just hunting her for her criminal past, they were after something far more dangerous. An artifact, hidden within Zara's mind, that could change the very fabric of the galaxy. Zara had always been a figure cloaked in mystery, but now she was something else entirely. She was a key to an unimaginable power, a power the Sashkaar were desperate to control. Marcus had heard stories of the Sashkaar's cruelty, their cold logic and relentless pursuit of their goals. The fact that they were willing to go to such lengths to extract this artifact from Zara made it clear just how critical it was. Zara's face was taut with the burden of knowledge, the fear of what would come next. She had always been a master of control, but in that moment, even she seemed unsteady. Marcus couldn't help but wonder, what was it like to hold a secret so dangerous, so important, that it made you a target of the galaxy's most feared race? They couldn't stay on the station for long. The Sashkaar were closing in. With their advanced technology and their unrelenting pursuit, it was only a matter of time before they tracked Zara down. The station, tucked away on the edge of the nebula, was a temporary hiding spot, not a long-term solution. We have to move, Marcus said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but the urgency was clear. We can't stay here. The longer we wait, the closer they'll get. Zara nodded, her eyes still distant, as if she were seeing something far beyond the small room. She had been running for so long, always a step ahead of those who pursued her. But this time, the stakes were different. She wasn't just running from the Sashkaar, she was running with the knowledge of what she carried. We need to get to a place where they can't find us, Zara said, her voice sharp with determination. There's an old contact of mine, a safe haven on the planet Valdar. It's isolated, and it's the one place the Sashkaar won't think to look. Marcus studied her for a moment, weighing her words. He had no reason to trust her fully, but something about the way she spoke, there was no hint of deceit in her voice. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. She was trying to survive, just as he was. "I'll trust you for now," Marcus said, his expression firm. "But we need to move quickly." The two of them left the station in haste, Marcus leading the way as they boarded his ship. The countdown began, and Zara took a final glance at the station's fading lights before stepping onto the ship. It was a quiet departure, but the tension in the air was palpable. Zara had become more than just a woman on the run. She had become the galaxy's most important secret, and the Sashkaar were coming to take it from her. As Marcus navigated the ship into open space, Zara finally allowed herself a moment to think. She had spent so many years orchestrating her escape from one danger after another, but this time it felt different. The artifact inside her mind wasn't just a physical object, it was something that could change the entire balance of power in the galaxy. The Sashkaar had once been a powerful race, and if they gained control of this artifact, nothing could stop them. Zara had always been a survivor, but now survival meant more than just outsmarting the next threat. It meant keeping the universe from falling into the hands of an unstoppable force. But she wasn't alone anymore. Marcus Hawk, the human she had once dismissed as an unlikely ally, was her only chance. Together, they would have to outrun an enemy who would stop at nothing to destroy them both. As the stars streaked by, Marcus set the course for Valdar. The planet was a remote, almost forgotten world, but to them, it was the last hope of safety. The journey would be perilous, but it was their only option. They had no time to waste. Marcus glanced at Zara, who was staring out the viewport, her expression unreadable. Whatever had happened to her to make her the keeper of such a powerful artifact, it had clearly shaped her into the woman she was today: smart, ruthless, and now, maybe even a little vulnerable. She wasn't just a criminal anymore. She was the galaxy's most wanted woman, and she carried with her the key to an unimaginable power. The journey to Valdar was long and treacherous, but Marcus Hawk didn't allow himself the luxury of rest. Every decision, every course change, every potential threat had to be weighed carefully. His ship, though fast, was far from stealthy, and the farther they traveled, the more exposed they became. The Sashkaar were relentless, and their technology far surpassed anything Marcus had encountered in his years as a soldier. It wouldn't take them long to track Zara down if they knew she was on the move. Zara sat across from Marcus in the cockpit, her eyes distant, lost in thought. She had been quiet ever since they left the station. The weight of her secret seemed to have intensified with each passing minute, but Marcus could see the fierce determination behind her stoic expression. She wasn't just running from her past, she was fighting for the future of the galaxy itself. "How much farther?" Zara asked, breaking the silence. Her voice calm but tinged with something he couldn't quite place. Was it fear or hope? It was hard to tell with someone like her. "Another day or two," Marcus replied without looking up from the navigation console. "If the Sashkaar don't find us by then, we might have a shot at getting to Valdar safely." Zara nodded but didn't respond. The unease in the air was palpable. Marcus could tell she was anxious, her mind racing with the weight of the artifact buried in her subconscious. What was it? He still had no clear understanding of its true nature. All he knew was that it had to be something of immense power for the Sashkaar to be willing to burn the galaxy to the ground to get it. As they neared the edge of the Valdar system, the atmosphere aboard the ship shifted. Zara stood up abruptly, her movements sharp. "We're not alone," she said, her voice suddenly tense. Marcus immediately froze, his instincts kicking in. He didn't need to ask her how she knew. Zara had been running from danger for so long, she could practically sense when she was being hunted. "They found us," she added, her gaze scanning the ship's sensors. "The Sashkaar, they've caught up." Marcus didn't hesitate. He slammed a hand down on the control panel, sending the ship into evasive maneuvers as a dozen red blips appeared on the radar. The Sashkaar had closed in faster than he expected. Their fleet had arrived silent, deadly and precise. "Get to the rear hatch," Marcus ordered, voice steady as he gripped the controls. "We need to get out of here before they lock us down." Zara didn't argue. She sprinted toward the back of the ship, her movements fluid and practiced. Marcus knew she wasn't just an escape artist, she was a fighter, someone who could think and move in ways few others could. He only hoped that would be enough. As he steered the ship into another series of evasive moves, Marcus could hear the distant rumble of weapons fire, the unmistakable hum of the Sashkar's devastating energy blasts. His ship shook under the impact, but he didn't slow down. His focus was unwavering. They had to make it to Valdar, and they had to make it there alive. Zara returned from the back hatch, a small but heavily modified plasma gun in hand. "I've got the rear covered," she said, her eyes sharp as ever, though the tension in her face was now more pronounced. "Good," Marcus muttered, tapping his wrist console to check the status of their shields. They were holding for now. But for how long? The Sashkar were relentless, and they knew how to track their targets through hyperspace. It wasn't just a matter of outrunning them, it was a matter of surviving long enough to find a safe haven. Zara didn't seem as worried as Marcus had expected. Instead, she looked almost resigned. It was as though, in that moment, she knew this fight was inevitable. The Sashkar wouldn't stop coming until they had what they wanted. "They won't give up," Zara said quietly, her tone steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "And they won't be merciful." Marcus glanced over at her, noting the cold calm in her eyes. "No one ever said they would be," he replied grimly. "But we've survived this long. We can make it." She didn't answer, but the faintest glimmer of something hope perhaps flickered across her face. They might not have much of a chance, but as long as they were still moving, they had a shot. The ship jolted again as another blast hit its shields, sending a shockwave through the hull. Marcus gritted his teeth and pushed the engines harder, his eyes darting over the navigation screen. Valdar wasn't far now, but the Sashkar were closing in. The fight was far from over, and the price of survival had just gone up. But Marcus wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when Zara's future and the future of the galaxy was on the line. As the stars blurred into streaks of light, Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Their survival depended not just on escaping the Sashkar, but on something even bigger, finding out what the artifact truly was, and why it was so crucial that Zara never let it fall into the wrong hands. The planet Valdar loomed ahead, a distant orb of swirling blue and green, its surface dotted with deep jungles and sprawling deserts. It was an inhospitable place for most, but for those who knew its secrets, it was a refuge, a haven for those desperate enough to seek its protection. To Marcus Hawk, it was their last chance. If they didn't reach its surface soon, the Sashkar would make sure there was no place left to hide. The ship rocked violently as another volley of energy blasts hit the shields. Marcus slammed his hand on the console, making a sharp course adjustment. Valdar was close, but not close enough to outrun the Sashkar's relentless pursuit. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. One wrong move, and they would both be dead. Zara was at his side, her eyes glued to the monitor. She wasn't just a passenger, she was a fighter, someone who had lived in the shadows for so long that she could sense danger in ways that few others could. She had been a survivor, but now survival was a team effort, and Marcus had come to rely on her instincts. "We're not going to make it at this speed," Marcus muttered, his mind racing through the options. The Sashkar ships were faster, better equipped, and they were closing in faster than he could calculate. If they didn't make the atmosphere soon, the planet's defenses wouldn't be able to shield them. Zara turned toward him, her face more determined than he had ever seen it. "We can't outrun them. We have to fight back." Marcus considered the suggestion for a moment. They were outgunned and outnumbered. Their only advantage was the element of surprise. Valdar had a network of underground bunkers and hidden shelters, but to reach them, they had to first make it through the planet's atmosphere and past the Sashkar's relentless firepower. "We fight them on our terms," Marcus said. "We have one shot." The ship shuddered again, the shield starting to flicker as the Sashkar fired on them from a distance. But the Sashkar weren't the only threat now. As they approached the planet's gravity well, the atmosphere itself became a weapon. The ship would need to break through it at the right angle or risk disintegration. "Get to the weapons," Marcus ordered. "We'll need all the firepower we can muster if we're going to make it through the Sashkar's blockade." Zara didn't need to be told twice. She moved swiftly, disappearing into the rear of the ship where the weapons were stored. Marcus could hear her loading and preparing, but the real battle would be in the air. He steeled himself, knowing that once they entered the atmosphere, there would be no turning back. As they neared Valdar's atmosphere, the Sashkar finally launched their final attack, a barrage of plasma fire that threatened to overwhelm their ship's already weakened shields. Marcus gritted his teeth and guided the ship into a steep dive. The stars outside the window stretched and twisted as they plunged downward toward the planet, the ship groaning under the strain. "Hold on," Marcus shouted as the craft barreled toward the surface. A last, desperate maneuver. He pushed the engines to their limits, forcing the ship into a wild spiral to avoid the incoming blasts. The Sashkar followed, unwilling to let their prey escape. Zara's voice crackled through the intercom. "I'm ready. Tell me when to fire." The tension in the air was thick. With every passing second, the odds of survival grew slimmer. Marcus could hear the hum of the weapons charging in the back, ready to unleash their fury. "Now," he said, gritting his teeth. "Now, Zara." She didn't hesitate. The ship's weapons roared to life, and the rear turrets unleashed a barrage of firepower directly at the pursuing Sashkar ships. The first few blasts hit their mark, causing explosions to ripple through the enemy ranks. But the Sashkar were relentless. They regrouped quickly, adapting to the attack and coming at them with renewed fury. Marcus knew they couldn't keep this up for long. The ship was barely holding together, and the Sashkar were only getting closer. There was one final option. A risky move, one that would either get them to safety or destroy them both. "Brace yourself," Marcus shouted, and without another word, he pushed the ship's engines to full throttle, heading straight for the surface of Valdar. He aimed for a thick forest far below, knowing it was their best chance for a crash landing that might not end in immediate death. The ship shuddered and groaned as they plummeted through the atmosphere, the ship's heat shields flaring white-hot. The Sashkar ships followed, firing once more. But Marcus was a man who had made it through countless close calls. He trusted his instincts, and right now, those instincts told him that the only way to survive was to take the most dangerous risk of all. As the ship broke through the clouds, Marcus pulled the controls to veer just at the last moment, aiming for a thick cluster of trees. The ship slammed into the forest floor, the impact jarring enough to rattle every bone in his body. The world went black. When Marcus finally regained his senses, the ship was smoking, but intact. The forest around them was dense, and the sounds of the Sashkar ships had faded. For now, they were safe. But Marcus knew one thing. This was just the beginning. The Sashkar would regroup, and the fight was far from over. But for now, they had a small, fleeting moment of survival. The real battle was about to begin. Thank you for watching this extraordinary tale of survival, betrayal, and the strength of human ingenuity. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Starlight Sci-Fi for more thrilling adventures from the farthest reaches of the galaxy. The stars may be cold, but the light of humanity is blazing brighter than ever. Until next time, keep watching the skies.